Alright everyone, we start off today calling out some black-pilling nonsense, and it's very easily disproven if you really look into what's being said by many of the people that are actually peddling it. The idea is that Trump should not be the 24 nominee because he can't win. I already explained the other day a few reasons why this is horseshit, but I'll explain them again for anyone that didn't see the live stream. First, Trump has legendary levels of in-party approval. I mean, as far as getting the nomination, he doesn't really have any competition. I think that the sudden shift to pro-DeSantis sentiment among even leftoid legacy media, as opposed to Trump, is designed to trigger a primary battle. I think that the whole goal is they realize that if Trump simply grabs up the nomination without any fight, so he doesn't have to debate other Republicans, he doesn't have to waste time doing anything like that, he can just go and join the general campaign far earlier than the Democrats can even necessarily get things fixed up, that he has an advantage. I think they worry about that. They're looking at matchup polling, and that's point number 2, that shows that Trump is running ahead of Biden. Trump ran behind Biden in 2020, to be clear. Fortification and honking aside, the polling aggregate was quite clear. Joe Biden did have an edge over Donald Trump in the end polling stage. That is the truth. It's the statistical truth. I've been analyzing these polls for a long time. You can win without having the main polling advantage. It really depends more where the votes come from. It doesn't matter if 10 million extra Californians vote for you. It doesn't matter if 10 million extra Texans vote for you. If it's not a state that's in play, the votes fundamentally don't matter quite so much. You can have massive turnout in blue cities or in rural districts, and it doesn't really affect things quite so much. Really, you're talking about a dozen competitive states. If Trump were to fight against Joe Biden in the 24 election, and he has any advantage in end polling at all, it would show a massive swing in turnout, and he would win the general election. Not only would he win it, he would sweep up more states than he got in 2016. It would be a clear-cut landslide. This is, by the way, why the Democrats and the legacy media right now are trying to proactively blame a pending SCOTUS decision with regards to the state legislatures controlling the election process and whether other federal workers at the legislative level count fundamentally as being part of the legislature. Quite clearly they don't. It'll be a 6-3 decision, trust me. The Democrats won't get their way on this one. They're trying to preemptively blame their loss potentially in 2022. The decision could come down, I believe, before that. And certainly 2024, they're trying to blame the Supreme Court. They'll dovetail this in with their attacks on Trump by saying, well, 3 of the justices that voted for this nonsense happen to be Trump appointees. See, it's a slow-rolling coup. They're literally using that language now. Here's one thing I wanted to address, though. Some of the arguments for Trump not being able to win boil down to the system is so fundamentally broken, don't even bother participating in it. He can't win because of fortification. Now, if you look at the Wisconsin State Supreme Court decision, if you look at the reforms that have been implemented in Florida, to an extent Arizona, certainly in Pennsylvania, fortification is not going to be so much of a problem. There has been a huge backlash against the Bloombergization of the 2020 election in the form of state-level reforms already. Again, dovetailing directly in with a SCOTUS case that could fundamentally cripple the Democrats' capability because the GOP is being overrun by the MAGA crowd, and the GOP controls a considerable majority of state houses right now. Dovetailed in with the SCOTUS decision, it would prevent the Democrats from being able to really do anything to, fuck around with any of the results. Of course, that never happened in 2020, honk honk, but if they wanted to, if there were shenanigans going on, they would be effectively decapitated in their capability of defending themselves in a court. You would see a markedly different outcome, I think, than we saw prior. Here's the point. Let's say that you think that Trump can't win because of the entire lamestream's against him, and that is true. This fortification, etc. Would you believe, therefore, that any other GOP candidate would fare any better, assuming that they were independently minded, not astroturfed, as I'm increasingly believing that DeSantis may be? If Trump does not run, and DeSantis does run, and becomes the nominee, I'll take a chance with DeSantis. I'll be prancing with DeSantis. But I wouldn't prefer him over Trump. And the problem with the argument is that you're arguing that Trump would be locked out of the system by some sort of collusion. But then you're saying, but this other dude who is totally independent, CNN told me so, he can magically win without being an establishment pawn. Why would they allow somebody else in who supposedly is younger, more charismatic, more energetic, and more well-liked, none of which is necessarily true other than the young part? Why would he be allowed to win? If there's that shenanigans going on, what would the difference be? Anyone who is independent would be locked out of the system. The Dems, by the way, do this within their own primaries. I will give Bernie Sanders credit for one and exactly one thing. He's a socialist. He's out of touch. He's nonsensical. He's a raving lunatic. But he does run independent grassroots candidacies. The Democrats screwed him twice in a row, completely fucked the dude over. There was open collusion within the Dem party between, for example, the DNC and its debate scheduling and so forth that it put forth with the debate commission. Open collusion between them and the Clinton campaign. Open collusion between them and the Biden campaign to lock Bernie Sanders out of the nomination. While I do not believe that an elderly socialist would have won the nomination anyway in a fair fight, there was open shenanigans going on in the Dem primaries. That is the truth. There's plenty of dirty dealing that's going on. The Dems hate independent candidates within their own ranks. Their one legitimate bitch, of course, being that Bernie Sanders hadn't even been registered as a Democrat until the last few years anyway, and so they looked askance to nominating someone who clearly didn't have partisan loyalty. And as a corporate political entity, they have a right to defend their own self-interest. It's interesting, actually, that is perfectly acceptable. Usually you'll remember, most of the shenanigans in an election happen at the primary level. They don't happen in the general. There's no reason to, because you have two controlled opposition candidates. They stand for the same globalistic neoliberal values that will enhance the lives of the billionaires, while the same people claim that they're going to tax the billionaires or do something and never actually happens. If Trump can't win because of various considerations, then no other independent candidate would be able to win. You might as well just be completely black-pilled, clock out of the political process entirely. So there's no reason for you to weigh in on it, because quite clearly the process is dead and we're headed for Balkanization, Byzantine status, etc., etc. I do not believe that. I believe when I look at the landscape of things, the defortification that's occurring, the complete overrunning of the lower and state echelons of the GOP by MAGA, by populism, I say that yes, Trump can win. Not only can he win, he would be very likely to win. He'd certainly win the primaries. There's nobody that can oppose him. He's got more than 50% of the vote in most of the polls already locked up. All he has to do is have a clear primary process where half the states suspend the primaries because of his technical incumbency, and he becomes the nominee. Then it becomes really a question of who does he choose as running mate. If he chose Rand Paul, I'd cream myself and start knocking on doors, I suppose. It's DeSantis, which is unlikely because they're both Floridian, and the Florida state constitution would prevent electors from being allocated to both people at once. Well, yeah, that could be a problem, but it'd be an alright ticket. I'd prefer Rand Paul myself. I do believe that it is possible, under the right circumstances, for a truly independent candidate to win. The other thing is that some people are, well, Trump shouldn't win. He didn't do anything during his term. Bull fucking shit. I've made 100 videos on the topic of some of his victories. Yes, the wall is a victory. Yes, tax relief is a huge goddamn victory. The whole getting rid of the ACA mandate tax thing was definitely the icing on the cake, and not starting new wars. Now Joe Biden, to his massive discredit, after having several sundown moments the second that he arrived in Israel, one of the first fucking things he starts talking about is how the U.S. would be willing to use military force against Iran as a last resort if they start getting too close to making the nuclear bomb. It's interesting. We've been warned about them getting the bomb since the 90s, and they've suffered numerous, you remember Stuxnet? Numerous military and quasi-military operations against them without any proof that they're even attempting to develop it. And then the Obama admin paid them billions of dollars inexplicably in the middle of the night, shipping over pallets of US dollars to them in a wanton effort to stop them from getting the bomb. Yeah, that really works. Appeasement and détente. We see how well that worked with Russia and China and numerous other nations in the world. Worked so well with Iraq. Saddam was rolling in it for a while. Still decided to turn his back on Uncle Sam. Wonder why? Could he have been looking at neighboring countries and seen how fair weather a friend Uncle Sam can be? I wonder why. No, Trump can win, actually. And being black-pilled about things, again, you might as well not weigh in on politics at all. If you think that the system is so irrevocably broken that it's impossible for an independent-minded person to enter the rungs of politics, then it's game over. So you might as well just do more survival seed supplying or something like that. That's about all. Peace out.